This is the link that Karen sent, right? You're muted. Sorry.
It was, it's the one on the event calendar. So
Okay.
I'm actually, let me see if it opens a different meeting or not. Let me open the,
There's just no one else on here.
yeah, it's the link. I mean, I just clicked on it and it went to this, so I assume
Okay.
it has to be. I can
Good deal.
leave and actually I'll leave and just get back just in case. I'm gonna try that link.
Thanks. It's weird.
Yeah,
Usually people on at this point.
indeed. It does make you a little bit nervous. It is, I mean, it's the middle of the summer, so maybe there's a few people like that are on vacation who would normally be on early.
Yeah. Where is everybody?
There wasn't a time change, was there?
Not that I know of. I mean, I talked to Karen like 6 times yesterday.
Yeah, I don't see anything else.
Just the event calendar that I sent out. Or that Karen forwards and looks like I sent out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
is there something on fire in the mountains right now, by the way? I noticed a red sun last night.
Yeah, there's a fire up by Eagle that's apparently not like past Vale.
Okay. Oh, I think that may have been running when we were on our trip. Is
Yeah,
that the one? There was one that was making the Black Canyon of the Gunnison like really hazy. So we were talking to the ranger and it
that
was
was
really
yeah, that was one of them. And then another thing in the Western Slope was Arizona fires were affecting us in Telluride. They were like blowing in. But yeah, I think that's the one in Eagle, and then is the one that's blowing in. It smells like smoke at our house big time.
yeah, smoke
Morning.
started coming in this morning at our house in the windows. It wasn't in the night, but it was like
Yeah.
probably 6 a.m. or so. Started wafting in. Morning.
Good morning. My computer's acting up this morning. It won't load my emails from this morning. I'll have to restart it maybe. Yeah, it only goes up to last night and there's a ton more. So. Yeah.
Well, let me know and I can stop by on my way to Longmont this afternoon.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably just need to restart the computer.
Probably.
So I know Ken won't be with us at this meeting, but I didn't hear from anyone else. Okay, that was Joyce, and she's having internet problems, so she is going to call in. Okay, our vice chair is Jessica. Jessica, would you like to run the meeting?
Sure.
Great.
I wasn't prepared for that, so let's we'll just go for it. So
Sounds
do we have
good.
a quorum? Are we good?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes.
Perfect. Alrighty, well then we'll just go ahead and get started. So we'll start off with the approval of the May 2021 minutes. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at that, if there's any questions or comments. I don't see any hands, so with that, anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Deb
Yep.
and Kyle. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. If there is no issue with that, then we'll just move on to the next item, which is the acceptance of the June Treasurer's Report.
Up in front of you, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Nothing unusual. This month, no unusual expenses. No unusual deposits. Still constantly membership renewals out there. They're on a rolling. Oh, there you are, Joyce. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Downing.
Go ahead.
Oh.
Jessica's doing fine. Thank you.
So I've just sent out the June membership for the people last year who didn't join until June again. And so you'll see the numbers fairly large, but it's a rolling number and I think we're okay. It's not one that's been hanging out there for a long time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I would present it as it is on the screen and ask for acceptance.
Any questions? I don't see any. Someone want to move to accept the June Treasurer's Report?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. If there are no questions or concerns, we'll take that as accepted and move on. Oh, this is my favorite one. Not really, but sure. Let's look at that employer traffic reduction program update.
We're going to have
providing,
Catherine.
oh,
Yeah, we're going to have Catherine give this one. Catherine's, all of us have been really involved in this, but Catherine is involved in the nuts and bolts of it, particularly the rulemaking and the important things that happen for us, particularly with how we will do outreach to employers and the surveys that'll be required and that sort of thing. So Catherine is our in-house resident expert. Turning over to Catherine.
Well, thanks, Karen. I'm going to try and keep this run through brief, and then we can always talk about questions afterward. It's a very complex issue. I wanted to mention that we have joined in a TMO coalition for party status. So we and the other 8 TMOs in the Denver Metro, we are coming together for party status to advocate for specific things in the rule. Just because we're advocating for these things doesn't mean they're going to happen, but because we are joining together in a coalition, it gives these things power, these requests power, or I guess recommendations. So we're recommending phasing employer compliance, starting with the largest employers first. So starting with employers that are 250 or more employees, and then phasing in the smaller large employers, so over 100 employees. We're advocating for focusing on trips occurring during the ozone hours, so that's 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. rather than 24-hour trips. We're advocating for a tiered SOV rate goal based on the context that an employer is in and their transit access. We're advocating for employee training of whoever is going to be our in-house liaison to these employers, advocating for the opportunity to train folks. And we're also advocating for recognizing equity concerns among different types of workers. Not all workers have the same access to things like teleworking and things like that. We're advocating for that being recognized in this rule. Not sure how to solve that problem, but we want it to be recognized. We are working right now to contact all of our large North area employers. That's really our primary goal right now, is we want to touch base with all large employers so that they are prepared for this rule. We're trying to do some Zoom meetings with folks so that we can answer specific questions about each trip, because there's a lot of confusion about what's going on. It's a very complex issue, and collecting kind of initial contacts from these employers. We want employers to be really prepared for what this rule is going to require them to do. And if anyone here is connected to large employers, we want to partner with you. I had a conversation briefly with Deb at ACE Rep, and we're going to be looking at potentially partnering on some notifying their large employer members moving forward. We want to be able to try to contact people to do some survey work in the fall rather than in the first quarter of next year, because frankly, the results will be more favorable to employers if we collect employee commute data in the fall compared to January. And then talking about the survey, E-Trip is going to require 3 things from employers. It's going to require for them to register, and that registration is going to need to occur by January 1st. It's going to require them to conduct an employee survey. And there are specified questions with that employee survey that they'll have to ask in a specific format. They'll need to have that survey turned in by April 1st. And they also are required to have a very high response rate to that survey. So that's something that we really want to work to support employers on. And then the last thing that they're going to need to do is to submit an E-Trip plan. And that's if they don't comply with the SOV rate goal, which we think are going to be the majority, if not all, of the employers here in the North area, at least if the goal isn't moved into a tiered SOV goal like we're advocating for. It's a 75% SOV rate right now as specified in the draft rule. So it's going to be tough for folks to meet that goal the first year. So those employers will need to prepare and submit an E-Trip plan that articulates how they're going to change policies or institute programs in order to meet the SOV rate goal. And that is, of course, due July 1st. And every year that's going to be the general due dates. Survey due April 1st, E-Trip plan due in July. If an employer becomes a large employer somewhere between like that schedule, then they have more like 90 days and 180 days to turn in these things. But I don't think that's going to be super common that an employer will go from 99 employees to 100. Now, the draft rule is written, and as part of the party status coalition with the TMOs here in the Denver Metro, there's others that have applied for party status. We're all going to be advocating for modifications to the rule. That rule goes before the Air Quality Control Commission and will be I guess, approved at their August hearing, which is about August 18th. Now, the AQCC is the regulatory authority for the rule, but the Air Pollution Control Division of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, they are the division that's responsible for overseeing compliance with the rule. So they are going to be working together once this rule goes into effect. So it's very complicated and it's a moving target right now. We are trying to support our businesses, recognizing that this is likely going to happen in August. And we're also trying to advocate for the fairest situation for folks that are not sited in a place that has the kind of rich infrastructure that a downtown environment offers. So that's the end of my update there.
I'm sure we all have a lot of questions, so anybody want to start? Kyle, I see your eyebrows going up and down every time she talks about it.
Yeah, this is just such an interesting piece of legislation. Do you have a sense, Catherine, about how this is going to be enforced? It's one thing to ensure that all the survey data is delivered, but then beyond that, how is this going to be enforced?
So in the draft rule as it's written, employers have 3 consecutive years to meet the SOV rate goal. And as I expressed, that's right now 75% SOV. So they'd have to try and get a quarter of their workforce commuting by other means. Now, the staff at the division, they have articulated a desire to work with employers and to not come in with a stick. They haven't identified any carrots as of yet to really help employers to comply. We'll see if anything enters the revised draft rule. They want to try to make this a positive experience is what they're expressing. The AQCC, it is already authorized to impose substantial fines. And they're allowed to, I think it's like $27,000 a day. That's like their authority to fine for any reason if someone's out of compliance with any AQCC regulation. Now, I say that with the big caveat that they are overseeing regulations on like large energy companies that have to meet certain like air quality parameters. And if they are out of compliance, that's what that 27,000 like cap is for. I don't think they're going to be fining E-Trip, but they're not articulating what they're going to do if a company is not putting in a good faith effort, if they're not going through the motions. And they are also not expressing what is going to happen if a company does put in a good faith effort, but is not meeting the goal. So there's a gray zone and people are not super comfortable with that, which makes a lot of sense. But as far as what we're hearing them articulate in meetings again and again and again, this is the division staff that is saying this. They are not going to be going in like with their guns drawn, wanting to fine immediately, but they're allowed to fine. There's nothing to prohibit it. And the rule isn't going to articulate like a smaller level fine. They're just going to leave the fines completely out of the rule because they're already enabled by legislation to impose those fines as a regulatory authority.
I guess I'm wondering, companies can say one thing, but what's the mechanism that ensures that they actually follow the plan that they say they are going to follow?
The way that it is written in the rule is like if a company continues to not comply, like they're going to have to make up the difference and maybe submit like an alternative compliance.
But how will somebody know that the company's not complying?
I don't know. I'm assuming like if they're gonna take it like just data-based, if like a company's SOV rate does not change at all over the course of 3 years, like there's no downward trend, then maybe they're gonna like pull that company's registration information up and they're going to look at that contact person and they're going to start asking some questions and they might start demanding this alternative compliance, which means that the company needs to find a way to achieve like that CO2 reduction and greenhouse gas reduction in other ways, like by purchasing new infrastructure. There's a bit in the rule about alternative compliance and how to go about submitting that kind of a plan. But again, it's pretty fuzzy. It's really going to depend upon the industry that someone is in And I think it's going to be a negotiation because it's very vague. And, that is the difficulty, I think, through this entire process is there's a lot of vagueness to the rule. And you can immediately start thinking a lot of exceptional situations and circumstances that some employers are in. And there really isn't any way in the rule right now, as it's drafted, to address those exceptional situations.
Okay, thank you.
Not a great answer.
I guess what Kyle's also asking is, what about people who falsify? What about people who cheat? And how do you know they're cheating? So the company says, you know what, this is baloney. I'm just going to say we're in compliance with their rule and back ends into that report. Have they talked about that?
It's come up in conversation, and other areas of the country that have this regulation, they face the same problem. One thing that is going to be required is that an employer turns in its data set through this little eTrip toolkit portal. And so conceivably, you're going to need to have like a line for every human that has responded to the survey. And you can design a survey. Baby, you got to go downstairs now. You can design a survey in such a way that you're not going to permit like someone to constantly submit. You can't just like assign an intern to like put in a bunch of false data. You can restrict the survey, so it's a little harder to do that. I think it becomes obvious if someone's falsifying data if they have like a very significant drop one year, and maybe it's the year that they would be out of compliance, that suddenly, they've been at a 95% SOV rate and suddenly they're at a 70% SOV rate without like a significant change in their eTrip plan. They're going to start asking questions, but that's the gray area of like actually policing compliance that is not articulated in the rule. It's a lot of unknowns. And I think that this is the kind of thing, I hate to use the metaphor, but like the airplane is being built while it's being flown. And there's a lot of uncertainty in that. But yeah, that definitely is a problem with all humans. And there are other regions that have done this for many years. And what we hear is that once everyone is kind of forcibly on board with an eTrip regulation, that business does actually start to see that there's benefit to them, and they are able to implement some really good policies that they wouldn't have done without being forced to, and that it's been a positive, like net positive for everyone. No one wants to really hear that yet. We're still, prior to being regulated here, no one wants to think that it could be a positive. But that is the evidence from like Seattle and from other parts of the country that have done this for many years. So I think that we're just going to have to figure out what they're going to do with like those really shady companies. And from what like Stuart Anderson, he's done this as a consultant for many years. It's very obvious if someone's doing that kind of stuff, and you can then call them up. And they're supposed to, they're signing off when they turn in the results. So technically, if they sign off that something's accurate and it's found to be not accurate, that's going to be a big deal. I don't know if that helps at all.
This last question for me is, has there been any movement, you may have touched upon this a moment ago, between urban downtown area requirements and suburban no transit requirements? Has there been any differentiation between those two areas?
So Karen might know a bit more about this. The TMO coalition, that is one of the things that we're advocating for, is a recognition that like context is very different around our metro. And there's been some kind of behind the scenes conversation with the Air Pollution Control Division, APCD, with their staff and with members of our coalition. And that does sound like one of the areas that they're willing to make a compromise on. And at our party status hearing, Tammy took great notes on that. A lot of the people who have party status were talking about how it is unfair to them in the context that they're cited in to be required to meet the same goal that a downtown entity is required to meet. So I'm personally hopeful that we might actually see them distribute a tiered goal based on like the context that an employer is in. And it sounds like they're favorable to not only recognizing the differences between like an urban CBD and a suburban area, but also the differences in transit access in those contexts as well. But it's all unknown right now. But I'm hopeful
Thank you.
about that one. There's other things that we're advocating for that I'm not sure they're gonna budge based on like the communications that our coalition has been forwarding to us. And I don't know if Karen has anything to add on this.
What's interesting is there's a dispute amongst us at the TMO level about these values, because while we in the suburbs are saying we don't have robust transit, therefore our options are fewer, and particularly the types of businesses we have out here that are often service industry, commercial industry, that sort of thing. Both Boulder and downtown Denver have said they don't want to be held to the standard of having a lot of transit because their transit services have been cut. And that they no longer have the robust transit they used to have, and they don't know when it's coming back. So internally among the 7 TMOs is a struggle about the differences in the ability of our areas to provide mobility options that'll reach this goal. So we have another call next week. We're trying to stay together as a coalition because we believe that we who do this business have more knowledge than the people writing the rule. They're just rule writers. They want to get to, they have a goal and they want to get to that goal. However, there's trouble in paradise, and I keep sending all these emails to my staff saying, okay, here's the next iteration. And I do worry that we're not going to hold tight on this because of that. What you've just said is there is an inequity between urban and suburban and rural, or semi-suburban and rural, which we in this area are suburban and semi-suburban and a little bit rural. If we look at what we are looking at within our service area and smart commute over in the easternmost part of Adams County. So the answer is it's changing every second. And until the rule comes out in August, we don't know. But we are today still advocating as a group to look at those different tiers of mobility options, given the kinds of area that we represent. Although Boulder has stuck their feet in and said, we don't want to be held to the level that you think we have, which is ironic because actually they meet all the goals already. Both them and downtown Denver really don't have to do anything to meet the requirement. So a little bit frustrating. It's ongoing. There's a lot of people. How many party status? 37 or something like that. Different parties have requested party status.
There's 34.
34. I knew it was in the 30s. And so what that means is there's 34 coalitions of people who want to influence this rule because it's not yet a very good rule.
There were some big groups too, like your Colorado Motor Carriers, your auto dealers, which represented over 250 dealerships across the state. The contractors, one of those represents over 600 contractors. So there's some major groups in there.
I think one of the other things that maybe we didn't touch on is that this is going to be a heavy lift for Smart Commute. And part of our coalition is advocating for getting more money to each of the TMOs to do this service, to be the resource and provide a toolbox and do, we might offer to be the employee transportation coordinator for a company if they don't want to designate somebody or hire somebody. And I know CDOT is looking at some of the new legislation that came in to see if they could give each of the TMOs something like $100,000 a year to put a new position into their group so that they can just work on this ETRP. Some of our colleagues like Stuart Anderson, who's really an expert on all of this and used to be a consultant on this, he'd like to see 250 per TMO, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we are hoping that in our scope of work designated by the Denver Regional Council of Governments that tells us what we have to do in order to get our funding, that not, if they put requirements for us to manage these ETRP programs, that they'll also give us money, and that's still on the table. We don't have any indication yet whether we're going to get more money for this or not. We do believe it'll take a full-time person.
Any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands. I do wonder about, Karen, if this does continue to move forward. So for us, we have several new big businesses coming into the city. Would we, it seems like our economic development department would want to be communicating with them that we do have a TMO, here's who you need to contact, blah, blah, blah. Is that what we're envisioning?
Yes, and so Catherine is putting all of those kinds of information pieces together. And if you, she is, I think you're working with City of Thornton on their, have you reached out to their EDC? Yeah.
Oh, no, we haven't reached out to the EDC yet. We're kind of going one by one, but we will be in contact really soon to get connected to those large employers, because yeah, we want them to understand what they're going to be required to do and understand how we can support them. We don't want employers to look at this rule and what's required and feel like they need to do it alone. Like Karen mentioned about, you know, the rule makers are learning a lot from us. We have been doing this for a long time, and we do not want any employer to feel like they have to recreate the wheel on this. We can very much support them to reduce the amount of time and effort that they have to put into this rule. So we hope to make this, again, a net positive to companies in the North area, that we can support them through this, and that they're going to come out with actually some good policies and programs that'll be as cost effective as possible to them.
And you know, the genesis of this is the greenhouse gas emissions reduction roadmap that passed last year, 1261, I think it is. And what we don't want is for your employers who have made a commitment to your communities to feel that this is going to be so onerous they don't want to go through with their contracts to locate here. We don't want people to, one of the reasons we were promoting 250 employees to start with was there are a lot of 100 plus employees up to 250, to allow those 100 to make plans for when they become 250. Instead, now it's anybody 100 and over. And the other thing we don't want is for your businesses to constrain their ability to grow, because then they will have this burden of an ETRP over their heads. So there's just so much that doesn't seem to us that's logically thought through in a way to roll this out. So if you were to roll this out and start with a pilot of 250, you would see, I think we, all of us, would see what works and what doesn't work, and then tweak it. And then as you roll out to 100 employers, it would be an easier rollout instead of starting with 100 and going forward. That being said, it's a good thing for the state of Colorado. It's a good thing to happen right now after COVID, when so many businesses are still willing to let their workers, if they're able, if their business is able, to telework or to flex work or those kinds of things. And we have always thought as a TMO that employers that have 250 people or more are much easier to find pools and pockets of carpools, van pools. They're much easier to consider a shuttle, maybe a partnership with a shuttle agency that's a benefit to their community, to their work community, like Google and Amazon and those kinds of businesses who often put in a shuttle for their employees. It's much more difficult for 100. The threshold isn't there at 100.
Well, I'm sure it'll be interesting to see what happens in August.
And Catherine, when you need the economic development contact information, you know who to call. I'll help you.
Yay, Deb. We're counting on it. I might just mention, if Emily, if you don't mind, I might just mention that some of the things that you can do to meet this criteria, one of them is charging stations. And so we've been exploring with St. Anthony North, what would that look like and how would they pay for charging stations and what kind of credit would they get? And there are some grants out there, like the Regional Air Quality Council has a Charge Ahead grant program. And we've been talking to Emily about that. There are other options besides telework and van pooling and carpooling and flex ride and that sort of thing. So there's a whole litany of things that an employer can do to meet that goal. But we're not there yet with the package of what that could look like. It's still in flux as I imagine it is. But for example, someone like St. Anthony North, where you have shift work, you have long hours, you have nurses and doctors who can't just get off whenever. So it's very hard to carpool. It's very hard to take transit if transit ends at 10 o'clock at night and your shift goes through till 2 o'clock in the morning, those kinds of things. So anyway, we're looking at the whole litany of criteria that will help an employer meet those goals. And we'll work with all of you. We're committed to being a resource and an educated resource.
Well, thank you both. Thanks, Catherine,
Karen?
for the presentation. Oh, Kyle, go ahead.
Yeah, you just triggered something. I didn't realize that there were other ways that we could potentially meet the requirements. And as a master developer, I'm wondering, to what extent can the deployment of EV charging perhaps enable some of the future employers to come in and meet the requirements? So if there's anything, realizing that this is very much in flux, but if there's anything, maybe Catherine, the bullet pointed list of how you can meet it as of this moment in time, realizing that it is in flux. If there's anything you could send to us, that'd be really helpful, because we're undergoing those master planning discussions. Literally tomorrow, we have a huge workshop on this. So
yeah, I'll take a look at the rule and see what they have in there, especially in the alternative compliance. They have some things articulated that I'm not as familiar with that section because it's out of my area of specialty, but obviously that's your area of specialty is infrastructure and things. So I'll see if there's anything in there, and I can send, the whole rule, but I'll try to pull out like the stuff that you need.
Yeah.
That's out there, but yeah, it's a lot.
And that makes me wonder, if you put in 2 charging stations at that location, but 0 employees have an electric vehicle, does that still count?
No, unless someone is submitting an alternative compliance plan, the trips actually have to be made.
Nice. Okay. I love this program more and more every time I hear about it.
We do too.
Ugh, all right, let's just move on. Baseline Broomfield bike event and North Glen Heel full moon bike ride.
This will be more fun. These are pictures of 2 events that we've recently participated in. And I think Tammy's going to speak to the baseline, and Catherine or no, I think it's, yes, Carson's going to speak to the heel.
So we teamed with Baseline, Kyle's Baseline. Thank you, Kyle, on I think it was June 5th for their first big event it was called a Take to the Trails event. It was a great event. We were there to support and talk to new residents about alternative transportation in the North area. There was a bike company there doing bike tune-ups. They had a musician, they had food trucks, coffee truck, Baseline was there. They had a bike decorating station. It was a great event. I counted at least 40 people that had come. Saw a family that had moved from Copenhagen that brought their cargo bags back with them. They bike everywhere. It was neat to talk to. Most of the people I talked to were either new to Colorado or new to moving back to Colorado, but new to the north end of Denver in our area. So they were very interested on all types of transit and what is there now, what's coming, what we're working on, how the trails connect. It was great. Jean came with the e-bike for the first part of the event. So we got to talk to a lot of people that were interested in e-bikes. You can see on that picture on the right, that was a elderly couple that's waiting to get their e-bike. So that was perfect timing because I had all kinds of questions for her that she could answer on how to ride them and use them and charge them and all that stuff. And then that middle picture was a lady that just moved back to Colorado with her daughter and her daughter's friends here for internships. And the girls were very interested on ways to get around using transit, not drive, which was great. And it was great to see Kyle in person and his whole body. But this is gonna be a long-term partnership with them. We're talking to them to partner with them on all their large events like this. So great. You guys did a great job, Kyle. It was a really good event. It was a lot of fun. It was hot. It was a lot of fun.
It was hot. Well, thank you guys so much for participating. It was great. And we look forward to more collaboration on future events. I mean, this is really the first one we've had, and we only have, I don't know, maybe even not even 30 residents who've moved into the community yet, but it's, and that's partly because we've been having difficulty getting building permits. But anyway, the community is continuing to grow. You guys did a fabulous job showing what transit options are available, what's coming. I particularly like the bike map on all the trails regionally, which was super helpful, and having the e-bike there was great. So you guys did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We actually had a lot of, quite a few people come from Anthem and curious on how Anthem and Baseline are going to connect. So that was really interesting too.
Joyce, did you have a question, or anybody else have a question or comment?
I'm fine, thanks.
How did you guys get the word out on that? Maybe I missed it.
We pushed it out through social media,
Okay.
both Twitter and Facebook. And then a kid, I can't remember, I think she had a piece of it in the newsletter. I'm not sure. But yeah, we pushed it out and we're going to continue to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in the newsletter, and then we were doing like a special email blast just for like all the bike events. It was in that too.
Okay. Nice. And what's the full moon ride?
I'll hit on this one quickly. I think we just have some really great pictures from this event. So this is, Catherine serves on the HEAL committee. So I'll take away this conflict of interest here and say that this event was great. We had like 35 or 40 people show up for this first HEAL ride. It's a full moon bike ride that happens every month. The city of Northland's doing, and it just happens right outside the rec center, and they do a different kind of path along the local community trails every time. And it's a really kind of family-oriented event. Here you can see Catherine interacting with a biker about the bike map and pointing out specific problem intersections in the community, which has been a really great thing for us. There's Catherine on our e-bike, a little bit better picture of the e-bike that Jean has been riding around. She's been bringing it to the event so that we can demo it and garner some interest for that program. And here's a little kiddo of Catherine's as well, which is just a great shot in the background. We had to use that one. It's too good of a smile not to. And just a few more shots, again, map interaction, but this one is really interesting. We've been using this little cup system with some responses from our survey about how we could improve biking in the North Metro region. So we just kind of slapped those responses on, thank you, Karen. Slap those responses on each cup, like better intersections, better bike trails, and people can just stick a penny in whichever one they think is the most important. And we've been able to get some interesting responses from that. We'll continue to do that all summer. And then there's a big shot, including the nice police force that came out and manned the crosswalks for us that night. And I think Catherine has another one of those either tonight or tomorrow night that she's manning while I'm over tomorrow night while I'm over in Longmont doing an event with Circle Graphics for their recycling fair for the next 2 nights. Thank you for saying that. Healthy eating, active lifestyle. My apologies. I skipped right over that when you asked what HEAL was. So yeah, that's just the committee in Northland that works on fun events like this and gets the residents engaged. I think that's it,
like
unless
fun.
there's questions or thoughts.
I want to say, I forget to tell all of you that this staff of Smart Commute are all engaged in a number of auxiliary things. So Catherine is on the Citizens Advisory Committee for RTD, and also on the Hill Committee for North Glen, where she lives. Carson is on a whole lot of technical advisory committees and the Association of Commuter Transit. And Tammy is on a number of technical advisory committees. We all are engaged in a number of auxiliary things that are supportive of the work that we do at Smart Commute. And so we often get an opportunity like the Hill Committee program to interact. And we have tried to be active with Sustainable Brimfield as well, Brimfield Chamber, AC Rep Chamber, all of those kinds of things in order to bring as much value as we can to the work that we do at Smart Commute. And I should always take the opportunity to thank the staff who do this on their own time often, and you know, represent Smart Commute, represent what we do, and bring back all of that to us. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, thank you guys for doing that. This is a lot of work outside of your normal, I don't know what your actual normal hours are, but I definitely appreciate you guys being out there.
This is Craig. I want to say just a couple things related to biking. So first of all, I was at the Baseline event. It was awesome. And I participated yesterday in a focus.
Craig, we lost you. I don't think he can hear us.
I don't think so. It looks interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we can put it in chat that he is lost. Let's see.
Well, now we really lost him.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on then, I think, Jessica.
We'll just come back if he gets back on there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we're on the transportation ledge update.
Sorry, my audio both ways just dropped out, he says. Before I take this on, I'm wondering if the person that's on the 720-627-000 could identify who they are, so we can put that into the minutes that you're participating.
It's me. For some reason, my phone didn't connect with my computer.
Oh, perfect. We wondered who got the 4 zeros in their 5 zeros in their number. That's great. Okay, thanks, Emily. So this is a very quick overview of the transportation bills that came out of the legislature this year. And as you can guess, because particularly the SB 260 is very complicated, people are still reading through that, you know, multi-100-page bill in order to figure out how this bill needs to be implemented. So I'll start off by saying the 260 Sustainable Transportation System Bill is really transformative in that it's bringing transportation funding through a new fee revenue instead of taking it to the voters to ask them to increase funding for transportation. It's a very complex bill, but its complexity also aligns from environmental planning and coordination requirements for future transportation projects. And it will impact the way Colorado does business for transportation in the future to align with the greenhouse gas roadmap. And it looks like, yes, and I'll take questions as we go if you'd like to. I'm gonna talk about 3 different bills. Next one, please. All right, so under this new bill, it provides ongoing stable funding from these new fees, but it's 10-year revenue. So when you look at these numbers, just remember this is over 10 years, which while we look at it, looks like a lot of money, but if you remember, and Carson ran this program, the 110, where we asked for a about $9 billion to take care of the needs in Colorado. You know, it's really frustrating. So this really doesn't bring you a lot of money in 10 years. And our 10-year plan is about $5 billion alone to do the 10-year plan. So this sort of money doesn't completely cover the 10-year plan even. So CDOT gets the Highway Users Trust Fund money about 1.3 billion over 10 years. The local share would be about 947 million. The Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, which is that used to be the faster money, it has been changed from the Bridge Enterprise to the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, with the understanding that, you know, we have Eisenhower Tunnel that needs to be fixed. We have Hanging Lake Tunnel that has to be fixed. And there's a number of other pieces. So they've included tunnel now and increased that amount to 522.8 million over 10 years. They're revitalizing main streets, of which many communities have had small amounts of money put into their communities to make their main streets more pedestrian and restaurant friendly. That is going to continue at 85 million. Multimodal and mitigation fund, 450 million. So there are questions about what exactly is that? And those haven't been answered yet, but it used to be the MMOF fund, used to be for transit, pedestrian and bike improvements. I do think there's more added to that this year. It has more complexity than before. And then public transit enterprise, 135 million, and that's to expand transit throughout the state of Colorado, not for RTD. Next slide. It creates two new enterprises within CDOT. So if you're familiar with CDOT, we have the high performance transportation enterprise, which is the toll enterprise, and that's the only enterprise we've had. An enterprise is pretty interesting. It's constrained by the amount of money that you can have in that enterprise. And because of that constraint, and in order to get enough money into each of those enterprises, they created a number of enterprises, two of which belong to, two more that belong to CDOT, several more that are general enterprises that we'll know more about and we'll know how they work as people sift through this. But Clean Transit Enterprise will really help with the replacement of combustible engines into electric motor vehicles, and that's 289 million. And then the non-attainment area pollution mitigation enterprise, both of these are under CDOT. This is interesting because it's going to work to mitigate environmental and health impacts. And we don't exactly know what this money will be used for yet, but we do believe that this might be where some of the money for ETRP comes out of. It might also be the kind of money that could be offered to communities, and they bring a local match and they could get local transit, or they could do improvements that would change behavior so that people aren't driving as much as they do. We don't yet know what that's going to look like. And I'm hoping in the next 2 or 3 months that we'll be able to have CDOT pundits come and talk about how these all are going to act and what we're going to use them for. Under the greenhouse gas emissions roadmap, it looks like 2030 before we look for any threshold changes in emissions. So this will be a gear up toward 2030. And then every 10 years after that, you know, there'll be benchmarks of how we're doing. But we recognize in the state of Colorado that it's a heavy lift to start from now till 2030. And so a lot of this money, I anticipate, will be used early on and won't be spread over 10 years. And I guess I should have made that clear. The money isn't necessarily going to be spread over 10 years, but in certain pots it might be. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the other one that came out this year, SB 265, and this is the Joint Budget Committee dedicates general fund money of 124 million to the State Highway Fund. And that's annually. The fund is flexible, so the Transportation Commission and the Budget Office can prioritize that funding. We have not internally at CDOT talked yet about where we're going to put that. 124 million sounds like a lot of money. It's not a lot of money. It's 200 million to fix 84th to 104th. You know, it's not a lot of money. Okay, next slide. The next one is the creation of the Front Range Passenger Rail District. And you guys got quite a good overview from Jim Suby last month about what it is and what it does. Basically, the legislation creates a rail district along the Front Range. There's, I should have looked this up, but at one point it was a mile from I-25, and it looks like the footprint for that Front Range Rail District has extended far beyond a mile from I-25. So that anybody in that catchment area will be paying for this special district if a majority of communities that are within this district agree. It's like RTD. So RTD, when they put out their initiative for fast tracks, didn't allow anybody to opt out of it. You got to vote for it within each jurisdiction. If you remember, Adams County didn't vote for RTD's fast tracks program. And yet, because the majority of people did, basically Denver and Boulder, everybody was saddled with that tax. And so it'll be the same thing with this. It will be determined by majority vote. It's going to be the largest special district in the state. The governance structure is going to be interesting. I think Jim Suby explained it last time about the appointments from the governor, and then there are certain appointments from CDOT and another couple of agencies. But it will bring a sales and lodging tax question to local ballots to fund rail lines and stations. And so each of the local jurisdictions within this catchment area, this Front Range footprint, will vote yes or no on that tax increase. If all of the jurisdictions vote no, except for large jurisdictions like Boulder and Denver and maybe Pueblo, who also get a benefit from this, we will be paying this tax. And then a new rail district replaces the Southwest Chief Front Range Rail Commission, which is what Jim Suby said when he came to talk to us. It used to be under CDOT. It'll no longer be under CDOT. It will be its own agency. And Tammy, you just put something in the chat that says areas located within a county precinct that wholly or partially located within 5 miles. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, because before it looked like it was a mile from I-25, and now it says counties that are partially or wholly within. Pretty broad brush. I think we've had the conversation before that there will be nothing in this for anything west of I-25. There's no stops allocated for Broomfield and none for Westminster. It looks like it would be Fort Collins to Longmont to Boulder to Denver Union Station.
It's so annoying.
Mhm.
Seriously.
I'm full of annoying stuff today. I'm so sorry.
Hopefully it won't pass.
Yeah, I just don't know. So that's what I have. Can we go back to Craig and see if he can recreate what he was saying to us when we couldn't hear him?
Sure.
Yeah, it looks like he logged on to a different
good.
device.
Yeah.
Craig, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I've been having trouble with my iPad audio lately, so I had to switch over here. But so I was saying I attended the Baseline bike event and it was awesome. But I wanted to mention that I participated yesterday in a focus group that Broomfield is having around sustainability, hosted by Camille Pollan, who's the sustainability manager at Broomfield, and the transportation manager, I can't remember his first name. I want to say Mike, but Ambrosi, you guys probably know better than I do.
It's Mark Ambrosi.
Mark Ambrosi. But, you know, they talked, one of the topics they covered was bike trails and bike paths, and soliciting feedback from the focus group on that. So I'm not sure if we're tied into that from Smart Commute, but it probably would be worthwhile, you know, making sure that you're tied out with Mark Ambrosi on the feedback they're getting and what they plan to do with that feedback. Because there was a lot of feedback about interconnectivity of bike trails with surrounding cities, and you know, the maintenance and usability of some of the bike paths on streets. So I just wanted to throw that out. Maybe you guys are already tied into it, but if not, I think it would be worth touching base with Mark.
Carson, you might want to speak to this. We have reached out to Mark, and I sat in on I think probably the PowerPoint that prepared for this focus group. And I told Carson about it, and Carson reached out to Mark. Carson?
Yep, I didn't want to interrupt. I think, yeah, I reached out to Mark, and it sounds like they're doing a wayfinding study throughout the city and county there, and trying to figure out what the best solutions are to move forward with some infrastructure. They weren't exactly open arms to us about being included in this process. Mark basically said, yeah, this is something we're doing, keep promoting biking, but didn't exactly reach out with open arms. So if you have any connection there, or are willing to represent Smart Commute, or I guess connect us to Mark in a different way, maybe that would be helpful. I think we've been trying with the city and county of Broomfield quite a bit to get involved in some of their biking activities, and it's just been a little challenging for whatever reason. So yeah, any thoughts there we would definitely appreciate.
Yeah, I'm tied in now through the focus group. I'm on the in email contact with them and stuff. So I'll follow up, Carson, and let them know that I'm also participating with Smart Commute, and I'm also obviously on the Sustainable Broomfield board too, so I can bring that to bear and see if I can make any progress with getting Smart Commute a little more connected in the process.
Thank you, Craig. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Craig. I'm glad we were able to hear your comments.
All
All right,
right.
any more on that Front Range Rail? I think we're good there. So the next section was about the letter of support for Erie.
Yeah. I'll give you a little genesis of this. So whatever date it says on that letter, June 2nd or something like that, Malcolm Fleming called me and said that Senator Hickenlooper's office had called him and said, you know, we have some discretionary funding. We're taking suggestions from our constituents. Does Erie have anything they want to ask for? And Erie has continued to be frustrated by the lack of attention paid to I-25 at Highway 7 and I-25. Been frustrated by the lack of transit opportunities, that RTD just doesn't seem to come in to the top of the taxing district, which is at State Highway 7. And he's been very vocal about the importance of the mobility hub for east-west transit and north-south transit, and the connectivity to the whole greater Denver metro, as well as Loveland, Fort Collins. And so he's been at the table a lot with us, particularly at NADA, at our retreats and others, talking about how important it is to put some funding into this mobility hub that sort of has lost its top tier status with the new administration, the new executive director administration at CDOT. So I pulled out the application, and we we wrote a couple of letters. I wrote a letter for Erie to specify what the project was according to CDOT's project sheet, which says $10 million. Well, that it won't cost $10 million. It'll cost 20 million, 30 million, something like that, but it's a start. And we talked about how important it is that they make improvements to a mobility hub that's been on the books, because there is no transit, and it's a chicken and an egg. The transit won't come because there's no slip ramps and no park and ride. And the transit won't come because there's not that stuff, and there's not that stuff because there's no transit. So we've been frustrated with that. Anyway, wrote the letter for Malcolm, and he plugged it into the application. Then he said, can you get me some letters of support? This was like a 2-day turnaround, because he called me on a Tuesday, 3-day, and the application was due on Friday. So I didn't have a lot of time. So I wrote a letter for NADA, and because it's on the NADA priority list, we didn't have to go back to NADA and ask about it. Jessica, as chair of NADA, signed that letter. And then I called Joyce, and because we have talked about this as a priority, Joyce signed a letter. So we sent in the letters from NADA and from Smart Commute. I called Jennifer Hoffman on the Tuesday from Broomfield and said, could you guys write a letter in support of this application? And she said, no problem, I'll get it turned right around. And on Friday morning, I called her and she said, no go, my council won't support this, because they are part of the Northwest Corridor Mayors and Commissioners run by Boulder, and it's not the top priority. The top priority is 119. Last time I looked, Broomfield wasn't at 119. The second priority is 287, and the third priority is Highway 7 Mobility Hub. So Broomfield declined to participate in this request because seriously, because they didn't want this request to compete with the request that the Northwest Corridor Mayors and Commissioners were asking for.
That's going to be an interesting conversation at State Highway 7 meeting.
Oh yeah. So I said to Jennifer, I'm sorry, I've spent a lot of political capital trying to move this mobility hub forward, and I don't know what Broomfield wants now. And so if you'll just tell me what your priorities are, I will quit wasting my time. If this is not a priority for Broomfield, since 3/4 of it lives in Broomfield. And she said,
Wow.
let's meet. And so I have a meeting with her on the 27th and the city council on the 27th of July. But I can't tell you how infuriating and disappointed I was with this turn of events. I was just shocked. And I said to Guyleen Castrata, who's a new mayor, I understand regionalism and I understand regional cooperation, but the bottom line is you represent Broomfield, and Broomfield has to do what's right for Broomfield. And it's great to say, yes, we're all going to say 119 is really important. That shouldn't mean that stuff in Broomfield isn't important. So a little bit frustrated on that. And the process of the mobility hub now is that it's another chicken and the egg. So there's $1.5 million identified by CDOT to do some preliminary stuff on that mobility hub, which is slip ramps and a pedestrian bridge. 11.5 million identified in outlying years of the 10-year plan, which would be years 5. We're in year 3 now, so years 5 through 10. But this is complicated because it needs to have the toll roads going through here. It needs to be connected, and it needs a diverging diamond interchange replacement. And so the question becomes, how do you build something that isn't a throwaway in a couple of years? So I have a meeting with the Region 1 engineer for this, who's also frustrated as I am. And then another meeting next week about how we get transit to this vicinity in the short term and the long term, so we don't throw stuff away, but also to position it for a quicker funding scheme than 10 years down the road, when the you know, 270,000 cars coming through a day when it's, you know, more than that. It's frustrating. I have to say, I'm really frustrated with this whole thing. And anyway, long
So
and short of
Karen,
it, yeah.
wondering, have you heard from Adams County commissioners at all about this? I mean, you know, they were pretty vocal about that particular project for
I
a
was
while.
just gonna say that I don't see how we're gonna ever push any of this through now. If Brimfield's not gonna support it, you know, Adams County's not gonna support
No,
that.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just didn't support this letter. They still support the mobility hub is what I understand. They didn't support this jumping the queue to
Mhm.
get this in front. I have to say that the issue for Adams County has gone away. The issue was we wanted to bring the train over here. We wanted to find a way to bring the N line to the hub. And that would mean that the N line didn't go to 162nd at Colorado. It
Right.
would instead swing along. And I think that was their big issue, not that we were going to do a mobility hub. My understanding now is that Lynn Baca, who is past chair of Smart Commute and past chair of NADA, past member of Smart Commute, past chair of NADA, is
It's
very
okay.
supportive of the mobility hub. So I don't think they're going to be an obstacle. I think we have to have a strategy plan. When I talked to CDOT, they said, well, we're going to talk internally. And I said, I would like to convene a meeting of all stakeholders. Kyle, you remember when we had that stakeholder meeting with Jonathan Perlmutter and everybody, we had CDOT there. We had a number of people. I think now is the time to convene another meeting to talk about what's the vision for this. And it has to include RTD and Natalie Handlos, who is the service planner. It has to have the Department of Transit and Rail to bring Mustang down. And if it has to have Shoshana in it, it has to have Shoshana in it. I don't think we can continue to do this in silos with nobody talking to each other. I
Right.
did ask Department of Transit and Rail, have you talked to the developers? No, we'll get to them eventually. And I said, you're missing the point on this.
Mhm.
They are putting in development that can have very good connectivity if we do our piece right. And I've gotten a lot of pushback. I don't think it's the concept so much as it is the funding issue, you know, spreading the peanut butter around across the state. And we've already put a whole lot of peanut butter up north to the 7 and 8 segments of I-25. And, you know, we're looked at as a segment of I-25. So when you look at the amount of money spent on I-25, you've got the GAP project down south, you've got the Loveland Fort Collins project to the north, and the project in between State Highway 7 all the way down to 84th just doesn't get any love. So not to just totally frustrate everybody, but to give you an update on how this is going and the behind the scenes issues on this. I guess I'm just putting it out there to say there's very little likelihood that we will get $10 million from John Hickenlooper. But what I do believe is that it's bringing it to the forefront. I saw Joe Nagu set up fundraiser last week, and he introduced himself, and he said, I said, oh, I'm so glad to meet you, finally meet you. And he said, yes, I hear you're a troublemaker. And he laughed. And I said, yes, I've spent my whole life making trouble for people all around me. And I'm hoping eventually something will happen with that trouble. So he laughed and he said, yes, I understand that. So hoping that it's at least bringing this issue to the forefront, hoping that we can get a group of stakeholders together to talk about what this vision has to be, hoping that someone like Kyle can explain in his relationship to the mobility hub why we agreed originally that it's a 3-tiered approach with the mobility hub over the highway instead of on his property or on Lark Ridge property that sucks up a whole lot of that in parking lot. How it has to be separated for safety and for convenience so that it's truly multimodal. There's a component that allows traffic through it, a component that allows safe access to pedestrian and bicyclists, and a component that allows transit to make transfers off of the managed lane configuration. And just instead of just hearing from me all the time, I'd love to have a really robust stakeholder outreach that everybody who's interested in that mobility hub could come and talk about. And I do believe that it's beneficial to Adams County and to Thornton and to Broomfield and Erie, and just seems to me like the ideal collaborative project, regional collaborative project, much
Right.
more so than 119. I don't get 119. I support 119 as their commissioner. They've got a lot of stuff going on up there. They want to have rail and managed lanes and transit, bus rapid transit. They want the whole schmear up there. But I think our location has always been that nexus of where Northern Colorado enters into the Denver metro region, where Brighton and Boulder have connections from workforce and where you live and where you work, that sort of thing.
So with
That's-
that, with all that being said, Karen, I really support the idea of you moving forward, that we do host something like that. So why don't you take a look at it, figure out what we can do?
That's
Okay.
perfect. And
All
it
right.
might be Smart Commute that hosts it if I can't get CDOT to come to the table on
We're
this.
good. We're good. I mean, actually, maybe that's a good thing for us.
Any other
Karen,
questions? Oh,
yeah.
there we go.
So many, but I'll try and keep it brief. Beyond frustrating, do you recall when Highway 7 interchange is supposed to fail and get an F grade? I think that's not long from now.
So if I remember right, it was about 2018 when they said it had 10 years of life left. So now we're year 3 into that, so 7 years from now. And that's what I kind of remember. It might be a little sooner.
I wonder if there's any opportunity or any study which will show that it's going to fail sooner, because the amount of development in that area, both sides of the road and even to the east, is substantial. And then I'm just curious, how does the condition of that interchange compare to the condition of the Highway 119 interchange? If that's an interchange project, or if it's, I'm just trying to understand why 119 got the nod and Highway 7 did not.
So 119 isn't necessarily an interchange. There is an interchange on there. There's several interchanges along 119 that are asking to be redone. It has to do with the amount of traffic that's coming through that ends up stacking, because they're at grade, I think, intersections, and this 119 has a mobility hub on it as well at I-25. So it's really 119 west from where it is at I-25 west. So there's a mobility hub there. Then there's improvements on different intersections all the way. The reason, there's 2 reasons that I know of that probably make this complicated. One is our interchanges in Region 1, which is the greater Denver region. And the amount of money that's allocated to Region 1 is the biggest pot in the state, but also has the biggest amount of large projects, right? All kinds. We got I-70, we've got I-25, we've got 270, we've got 85, we've got 225, we've got Floyd Hill. All of this is in Region 1. So our project has to compete with all those other needs in Region 1 to get funded. And 119 is in Region 4. The other is you have a consolidated group of people vying for that project at 119. You've got Boulder County, you've got Boulder, you've got Longmont, you've got anybody up in the north area, and now you've got this Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition who used to advocate for US 36 and now has decided their next focus is 119. And so that's why Broomfield gloms onto this, because they're part of that group. So Longmont does, Broomfield does, Louisville does, Superior does. Trying to think who else down the road there. So you've got this coalition of a group advocating for 119. So those are the 2 major reasons, I think, but the biggest is that we're in Region 1 and they're in Region 4, and we have much more competition for dollars.
Got it. And can I just ask, is 119 actually in worse condition than Highway 7?
I don't think so. You know, it's apples and oranges, really. It's a different kind of condition. It's a safety condition, and it's a congestion condition. And yes, no, they're similar but different. I believe Highway 7 is more severe because of the amount of traffic that is traversing from Brighton to Boulder every day and back. And the amount of up by your area, Kyle, where the road is bottlenecked. So you have 3 lanes and you have 2 lanes, you have 1 lane. And in order to get bus rapid transit, it would never be bus rapid transit, just be bus, because it would be behind the stack, right? So Deb lives there. Deb lives right up there, and you see that every day. And the amount of traffic that's on State Highway 7, I think, is greater than 119, but I can't speak to that.
So we're not going to get
Legitimately,
front
'cause I
range
don't know.
rail over here. We're not going to get a mobility hub, yet we're going to get ETRP requirements.
Mhm.
Man freaking tastic.
It's not too late to pull out, Kyle. No, we are
Amazing.
going to get the mobility hub. By gosh, we are going to get that mobility hub. I just wanted to let you know that we made an attempt, and we now see where the cards are on the table. Now
Mhm.
we have to re-strategize. This is an opportunity for us to reinvigorate and re-strategize, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you.
Right.
Any other questions about that? I don't see any, so we'll move on to wellness and ergonomics videos presentation.
Right. So before we do that, I just want to say under other, I thought of something other last night, and that is, I know we talked about it last time, and there wasn't a lot of there was some enthusiasm, but not a lot, to do a letter of support for the unsolicited proposal on I-25. And I'd like to suggest once more that we think about that. I don't suggest that we write, Rhoda should have this project to improve I-25, but I do think I would like to write a letter and send it to all of you that says, we at Smart Commute support I was going to say scheme, that's not a good word, support the opportunity to improve I-25 from US 36 to Highway 7 and beyond in a manner similar to the unsolicited proposal, using private funding and toll revenue reimbursement to get these improvements done sooner than later. And you know, CDOT thinks they can do them, but they're beyond the 10-year. They're beyond. And the reason I'm saying this is because the North I-25 Coalition came in front of HPTE last month and asked us to support an opportunity similar to the unsolicited proposal. Not saying the unsolicited proposal is the one that they're supporting, but they're supporting the idea of using an innovative mechanism to get these improvements made. And if this unsolicited proposal goes through the process, then they don't automatically get it. It goes out for an RFP and anyone can bid on it. And also, if it goes through the process, CDOT can fine tune it. They can say, all right, on top of this, you need to provide a diverging diamond as part of this thing. So to just dismiss this unsolicited proposal is the worry that we all have. And so they're looking for people to write letters in support of the idea of getting this stuff fixed on I-25 through some innovative mechanism like a P3 or an unsolicited proposal like what Rhoda's gave us. So what I'd like to do is write a letter, a draft letter, have Carson and Tammy and Catherine help me finesse it so it's not just my angry old lady letter. Frustrated angry old lady letter, and then send it out to you guys and see if it's something you would be willing to sign off on. I know Gene Putman was all for it last month, and I don't see him on the call today, but at least to say, in essence, we believe that something has to be done on I-25 from US 36 to Highway 7 and beyond by some innovative method, and not wait 10 years out for CDOT to do this. Something, and so if you're all okay with that, I'm looking to the chair and the vice chair and everybody else, between now and the next couple of weeks, let's see if I can get that to you, and then you tell me yay or nay, and then we can include it in the HPTE's packet in July. I should say that I haven't had any indication from the governor that I'm reappointed to the Transportation Commission, but Shoshana called me and told me I was. And when we said goodbye to the commissioners who were termed out, I wasn't one of them. I didn't get a hard hat signed by everybody or a picture. So I'm assuming I'm still there. And then Nick asked me if I would be vice chair of HPTE. So I'll still have some influence, hopefully, at that level. Anyway, wait for the governor's letter.
I think I would just like to discuss it with our council, make sure that they're okay with that. But I think making it more general and not specific is definitely
Totally.
helpful.
Yeah. Yep. That sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Very much in favor of that course of action.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, I'm done with that. And Carson, you want to go to the next? We're so excited about this. We got a grant from Can Do Colorado for these videos. We partnered with Broomfield Chamber of Commerce, and Tammy found us a wonderful therapist who agreed to do these videos for us. We'll show you one of them and maybe a snippet of the other two. They're exciting. I'm thrilled with these.
Yeah, I'll just hit play, and please stop me if the audio is wrong. It might be a little off because we're playing it via Zoom, but it should work. The first one is about ergonomics. It's the short one. The other two are a little longer.
Hi, my name is Julie Bird, and I'm the founder of Coal Creek Physical Therapy, which I opened in December of 2001. I've been practicing physical therapy, helping people feel better and live a life they love since January of 1998. Today, I'm partnering with Smart Commute and the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce in order to bring you the ideal way to set up your teleworking or home desk situation at home so that you have perfect ergonomics and no aches or pains and ideal productivity. So I'm sure that you've all heard the word ergonomics, but what does that actually mean? Ergonomics is the study of one's efficiency at their workspace. And the goal of ergonomics is to fit your workspace so closely to your body that you reduce all strain on your muscles and joints, and that prevents aches, pains, and injury in order for you to focus and be as productive as possible at your workspace. So, what can good ergonomics do for you? Well, I can definitely tell you what poor ergonomics does. So, poor ergonomics, especially at a computer desk space, can cause low back pain, sciatica, neck pain, shoulder tendonitis, elbow tendonitis, carpal tunnel, and even plantar fasciitis, to name a few. So basically, setting up ideal ergonomics is going to prevent all of these aches and pains, and even treat them if you're starting to feel them already. So what I'd like to do is today go over how to set up a computer desk setup, as that's the most common thing that's being performed at home these days. However, if you do something like sew, cook, or work in a shop, you can also take this information and transfer it to that kind of workstation if that is something that you need to do. Okay, so where to start? I like to start with the chair height. So it's really important for your chair height to make it so that your hips are slightly to well above your knees and that you can place some weight onto your feet. I'm going to go through how to set up the desk first and then afterwards describe what it's doing for you, because it's always important to know what to do and then why you should do it. So, chair so that your hips are above your knees, you can place weight into your feet, something to support your low back in this position. So the depth of the chair should be that your back is supported and your knees are hanging off the front of your chair at least about an inch. The next thing to look at is your desk height. And you want to have your desk height at elbow height,
so that you can place your hands onto the desk and reach your keyboard without any kind of reaching up or reaching down. And your mouse should be nearby as well. Finally, your monitor should be straight ahead or maybe just 30 degrees down so that you can be looking straight ahead or ever so slightly down at your monitor. So what each of these things do is that if your hips are above your knees, you're able to keep your spine in lumbar neutral. And if you have the back support, then you're able to relax in lumbar neutral and let your upper body and neck follow suit. If you don't have this support, we tend to slump backward, and that causes low back pain and sciatica and transfers up into jutting your chin and causing problems with our neck discs, even shoulder impingement syndromes, and things like that. So we'll put this back in. The next thing is the height of the desk is really important. If the desk is too high, you're gonna have to scrunch your shoulders, and that will cause neck and shoulder pain, and you're gonna have to reach down for the keyboard, which causes carpal tunnel. If your desk is too low, you might bend over to reach it, causing low back and neck pain, and you'll have to cock your wrists up to get to the keyboard, which causes elbow tendonitis. Finally, if your monitor is up too high, then you tend to look up, and that causes neck pain and headaches. And if your monitor is too low, sort of like the natural setup of a laptop, then it also causes neck pain and headaches and often upper back strain. So one little comment about a laptop, it's ergonomically set up incorrectly. So if you're going to use it for a long period of time, I would really urge you to get a separate keyboard, plug it into the laptop so you can set the desk and the keyboard up correctly, and then put your monitor or your actual laptop on a box so that you can look straight ahead and slightly down. Great. So hopefully that makes sense for all the reasons that you should set up your desk ergonomically correct. And I want to add one important comment. Setting up your desk ideally is the right place to start, but you do have to tend a little bit to your active posture. It is possible to cross your legs, lean over, and reach for your desk. And so it is important to just think about your posture throughout the day, correct yourself every few hours or so. And if you do like to cross your legs, cross at your ankles, because this allows you to keep that lumbar neutral and not cross like this to lose your spinal neutral. So I think that is about all that I would suggest. And to recap everything, I would just say set your chair height so that your hips are above your knees and you can weight bear into your feet. Have something nice and supportive for your low back so you can relax into that neutral posture. Set your desk height at the level where you're at the elbow level so your hands can fall gently onto the keyboard, and your monitor at eye height or slightly below. And I hope this was extremely helpful for you setting up an ergonomically perfect desk space at home. And if you have any other questions about teleworking or commuting in the North Metro area, please contact Smart Commute.
So that was the ergonomics one. Karen, what do you think about just playing some previews of the next one? What do you think?
Yeah, so she's done two more, physical wellness and mental wellness. They're excellent. But they're longer. They're 11 minutes and 15 minutes, I think. So maybe we could just give you a quick look at this one and then a quick look at the next one and urge you to go and look at these. We'll send you the link. This is part of our grant, and we have the Broomfield Chamber critiquing these and having us make some changes as they see are important before we throw these out for everybody to use, but they're fabulous. So Carson, if you just do a quick few, a minute and a half of each of those, that'd be great.
Sounds good.
Hi, I'm Julie Burt, the founder of Coal Creek Physical Therapy, which I opened in December of 2001. And I've been a practicing physical therapist, helping people feel better and live a life they love since January of 1998. Today, I'm partnering with Smart Commute and the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce in order to bring you helpful and usable information for you to optimize your physical health while teleworking from home. Basically, the year 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic changed the face of the workspace. Most of us were charged with working from home in order to stop the spread of the virus, or at least slow it down. Now, even though the pandemic is a little better under control, a lot of companies are preferring to keep their employees working from home because there were great benefits to both the company and the employee. Most individuals love working from home because it's comfortable, flexible, and they save time and money on their commute. However, there is a physical detriment with working from home that snuck in unnoticed. Basically, most of us are taking a lot less steps. In order to get to work in the past, we had to walk from our home to our car, from the car to the building, and then we would sit at our desk space, and in order to get water, coffee, go to the restroom, we had to get up and walk across the suite, or even walk across the entire floor of the building.
So that's a teaser for physical wellness. We take a lot less steps now, and then she goes on to provide some great tips about how we can combat that as we work from home and continue to do that either full-time or part-time. I'll do the same thing here for some mental wellness tips, a little bit more involved here. This is the longest one as we try to think about our mental wellness from today.
Hi, my name is Julie Burt, and I'm the founder of Coal Creek Physical Therapy, which I opened in December of 2001. I've been a practicing physical therapist committed to helping people feel better and live a life they love since January of 1998. Today, I'm partnering with Smart Commute and the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce in order to bring you all helpful and usable information about how to optimize your mental health and well-being while teleworking from home. Basically, the year 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic changed the face of the workplace. Most of us were charged with working from home in the last year in order to slow the spread of the virus. And now that the pandemic is a little better under control, many companies are deciding to stay with this option because of the benefits to both the company and the individuals working from home. And while most people really enjoy working from home with the comfort, flexibility, and saving time and money on their commutes, there are some detrimental mental and emotional effects being documented, and I'd like to address these today. I'm going to share with you some really interesting findings of a couple of studies. Basically, these statistics were published by the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine, FlexJobs, and the Gallup poll. So 45% of people teleworking report that their mental health has declined while working from home. 54% of these people, of people in general, really miss having a routine. 65% of people are working more hours at home than they used to work in the office. And 83% are stressed trying to cope with juggling work and home life in the same space.
I think that's a good preview. We'll leave you with all the negatives, then maybe you can go watch it to see some of the tips later.
So I have to say that Carson filmed these. He helped her with the script, and he put in all of the other stuff that's imposed on the screen. If you go through all of these, you'll see that he has put in charts. He's put in diagrams. He edited and produced this. He went on site with her and helped her through these. I think it's a marvelous job. It's really well crafted, and we couldn't have done it. Carson, you took this on as a challenge, and it's a wonderful skill that you have. They look really professional. It's fabulous. So I hope you'll watch the other two all the way through. All of us on staff got something out of them. We got something out of them. We changed the way we set up our computer. We listened to what she said about why you feel depressed when you're at a computer and how to combat that, how to make sure that you don't remain sedentary, because the effects of being sedentary cause a litany of real physical health problems. They're fabulously done, and we'll be sharing them out to Nada and everybody else once we get the feedback back from the Broomfield Chamber, who are our pilot test.
I've got to go because I got to go do some shopping and get some of this stuff.
Well, yes, I mean, I bought a stand for my computer
I-
and put a pillow in my back, and I really, because oh man, my neck and head were really
Uh-huh.
hurting every day. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I can say I'm doing everything wrong. So
we gotta go shopping, Joyce. That's it.
yes, that's right. But it looks, I haven't seen, these different ones, but I'm looking forward to looking at them. And I do want to share them with the city too. So
Yeah.
when they're approved, the links would be great to be able to forward them on.
Yeah. Great job, Carson.
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's all we have, Chair. Pretty busy time for us. And as always, contact us, email us, text us if you've got things you want us to bring up in the next meeting, or connections, any of that. We're always eager to hear from you guys.
I have a quick question. When do we start working with you on our bike to work stations?
Catherine might know that.
Trying to find my unmute button.
Yeah.
I think it's almost time, right? I think it's almost time. It's September 22nd this year. And we just got the poster yesterday afternoon, late in the afternoon. So we're just starting to compile some of those resources, and the website is not quite ready yet to be set up for station signups. But when that happens, Deb, you'll be the first one I call. I think we're all eager to get some bike to work day stations across the region kind of reset up, and it's called Back in the Saddle this year is the theme. So that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure if we have any other items to discuss or anybody has other questions.
I think Pedro had said, are these going to be available? And I just said, we'll share the links. They're still in draft mode for the edits, but should be approved by mid-July. We can send you the links now while they're in draft. And there may not be any edits. We haven't heard back from anyone. We internally edited a few of the slides and speeded up some pieces and cut a few pieces to make it more watchable. But yes, we'll share those. We'll send those. I'll send those links out today to everyone.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Pedro.
All
Thank
right.
you. I guess that was I didn't see all these comments in there, sorry. Perfect. So those will come out to us. Anything else? It looks like a couple people had to drop off. Joyce, anything else that you think of?
I think we're good. Thanks, Jessica, for hosting today.
All righty. Well, with that, everybody have a great day. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for all the hard work to the staff.
Thank you. And I'll see some of you tomorrow at NADA.
Yep.
Thanks,
right.
Karen.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.